Hi, Chums. For our second episode, we have the most amazing and fabulous Deni Todorovic today. They are a vocal activist for queer and human rights, and they always, without fail, educates and asserts while looking good. As they are a fashion creative, the Star by Deni Instagram is like Carrie Bradshaw of Geelong. It's super extra with loads of cute outfits, dancing TikToks, and chit chat. So, how are you? How is lockdown?
Oh, that's the loveliest introduction ever. The Carrie Bradshaw of Geelong. I'll take it. How am I? I'm okay. I'm doing okay. We are in our sixth lockdown in Melbourne, or in Victoria rather, which I mean, at this point, I feel like we have become such professionals at this, or we're so used to this moment,
Yeah.
yet every time still feels sort of just as foreign, just as like emotionally taxing. But I mean, for the most part, today I'm feeling great. I decided to give myself a task this lockdown. So what I thought I would do was review a Taylor Swift album each day of lockdown, starting from Red. So literally it's been so nice because I found that like each day I've just been waking up and creating this content and not getting too bogged down in like, what are the case numbers, or, you know, because essentially like it is what it is with COVID at the moment. What will be. I find that if I set some boundaries with myself and the news, it's generally makes for a little bit more space in my mind for things that make me happy instead of anxious, you know?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, since you're big on words of affirmation, which I love, should we start by, setting the mood for the goodie?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I always, every day, I say that I try to lead into my day with empathy, love, and kindness. And it's just a really simple one that just sort of allows me to make space in my mind and in my life for real positive mindsets, because, you know, the opposite of empathy is ego and being selfish. The opposite of kindness is being, you know, mean. And the opposite of love is hate. And we don't want any of that stuff. So a little bit of empathy, love, and kindness goes a long way.
That is true. So you identify as gender non-conforming and dub this as the space in between, which I think is a really poetic way to define it. What does that mean to you?
Sure. So I am non-binary. Non-binary is an umbrella term. Gender non-conforming is the sort of gender identity that I most identify with. To me, it basically is an existence or an identity that exists beyond that male-female binary. So I'm not both. I'm neither. I'm somewhere in between, you know, and it's not something that I think sometimes there's this misconception about non-binary identities that we're all like gender fluid, and that like one day we feel male, one day we feel female, or more of the other. For me, it doesn't really work that way. For me, it's more of an energetic thing. It's more about energy. So on any given day, I might be tapping into like a more masculine or feminine energy, but generally it's like a crossover of all of those things. And then like all the energies in between the male female binary, because and beyond that binary. I saw this really beautiful tweet yesterday, which was like, feelings are just feelings. Let's stop gendering them. And I really resonated with that, because that's exactly how I feel pretty much every day.
I guess this is a bit fresh and topical. Admittedly, I haven't been following Australia's politics too closely, but the 2021 whole census randomly assigning gender to non-binary people. What would you say are the repercussions that will come about when you've got a queerphobic government that refuses to even acknowledge the existence of those who don't identify as male or female?
Yeah, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. I think the first point is that very emotional affirmation, right? So like we just started this conversation by affirming the both of us. The fact that the government refuses to affirm our identities on a real emotional level is just very disappointing. It feels dehumanizing. And it just feels yuck, to be like really simple. When we think about the repercussions of that, I mean, on the emotional standpoint, there is a reason why the suicide statistics of trans youth particularly is so high.
Yeah.
Because if they're being made to feel less than, or second or third class citizens by their own government, it's not going to really inspire very much self-love or a feeling of worthiness, right? So there's that whole aspect. Then from the second aspect is that the reason why we do this census, and we only do it once every 4 years, is to collect data of which will then inform the lives of Australians. It will inform their education, their healthcare, their employment, their benefits, and so many things. So it's like, how can you so ignorantly and foolishly just randomly assign, first there was the news, oh, they're adding a non-binary category, and everyone was so happy about that. Then it's like, oh, actually, this is the real truth. We're just doing that to tick a box, and we're just going to assign you at random. Well, that data then becomes invalid. It becomes inaccurate. It should be illegal, in my opinion. So it's just, it's really bloody disappointing, to be honest. Yeah.
It's so weird that they, we're so progressive and everyone was happy about it. And then they're like, oh, just jokes. And then they're
jokes. Back. Yeah.
Just jokes.
Yeah, literally.
But like, also overall, do you think that it's quite toxic for everyone to live in a world where gender is fixed? Like, without borders and boxes, I feel like we would be able to really unlock so much potential in all areas when we can live with understanding and compassion, and hopefully we'd have way less dickheads in the world who are, because they're kind of trapped in this straitjacket of constant confusion and insecurities themselves. So
absolutely. I mean, I think gender stereotypes and toxic masculinity have proved time and time again to be so harmful, and in so many ways, not just to queer people, actually, if anything, more so to cis and heterosexual people, because they're the ones who feel like they have to live according to the rule book. Blokes shouldn't cry, women shouldn't be too emotional, women are needy, women like only exist to create children, like all of these archaic belief systems that are just not true. I think the whole world could do itself a great service by breaking down those gender stereotypes. No one is saying, like, as a non-binary person, I'm not saying to anyone that we should erase gender, not at all, because that's certainly not my MO. It's about making space for a more fluid nature for us all to exist, a more equal nature for us all to exist. But sadly, that often really affects the sort of fragility of masculinity and the patriarchy and all those things. So yeah, I think everyone could do with a little de-gendering of their mindset, not necessarily their identity.
But everyone's on a spectrum and they move around. So
I believe that.
Being able to be all right with that would be a great start, because I think it would, I mean, even just in terms of creativity, it would, we would see some amazing new shit.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think we've finally come to a place with sexuality in certain parts of the world where, we really approach sexuality in a really fluid way now. And I see, kids on TikTok or younger people that I know in real life, they have a real fluid approach to their sexuality. Like no longer, like last night I was watching the new Gossip Girl, and
how's that?
It's amazing. And
it's
so amazing to see sexuality explored in a really fluid way in that show. And it's not this big like coming out narrative. It's just this thing where they might be at a party and like the girls will be hooking up with another girl, a guy will be hooking up with another guy, but then also with a girl, and it's just so fluid. And I think we've finally come to terms with the fact that when it comes to sexuality, we all very much exist on a spectrum. I think gender is the next frontier of fluidity, but I think it's a frontier that is going to be much harder to overcome, because people like categories. They like to be able to label things black and white, male and female. Anything else is a little bit too confusing for some people. And I think sometimes the space in between invalidates people who are so like head firm in their kind of cis identities. But what they really need to realize is that it doesn't invalidate their existence whatsoever. It just makes more space for everyone to exist freely.
Focusing on your personal experience, at what age did you know that you were in the space in between?
Yeah, I always say that I've known from as early as like 3 and 4 that I wasn't a boy and that I also didn't want to be a girl. But I didn't know how to articulate that. Certainly didn't have any language to articulate that. And then I guess what ended up happening for me was that I just chalked it down to the fact that I was always going to be a really like flamboyant boy, like a bit of a girly boy. You know, I was always called too girly. So that's kind of how I like reconciled that in my head as a kid. It wouldn't be until far later that I even heard the term non-binary. So I didn't really know how to word it when I was little, but I always felt it.
What were you like as a kid?
I was, to be honest, I was as a child exactly how I am now. I feel like I've never been more true to my inner child than I am now at 33. I was, you know, very expressive, loud, flamboyant. I loved dancing and music and fashion and art and hair and beauty. And, you know, my aunties and cousins would come over and I would sit them down and just do their hair and, you know, reach for lipstick and stuff. But I think that's often, that's a very visual representation of my identity. I think internally, I felt things that I knew didn't align with my gender that I was assigned at birth. So, or the sex that I was assigned at birth. So, you know, I think sometimes as well, it's really good to understand that not all non-binary people are just, you know, flouncing around in a tutu like me. That's just how my identity manifests. But I mean, as a little kid, I was just like a flaming homosexual, very, very camp in every way, and quite unapologetically so.
I love that. Well, what's your family like, and what was it like coming out to your parents?
My parents are amazing. My family is amazing. We are we're an immigrant family. So my family comes from Serbia, Romania, and then we've just done an ancestry test and discovered that we're actually from northern India. So we're not white. We are very ethnic and traditional in our mindset, in the way that we operate. My whole extended family is like that. We also grew up very religious. So these sorts of environments don't normally foster a lot of space for being queer. So I came out to my parents as gay when I was 19, and that was really hard for them to I mean, it wasn't surprising to them, but it was, you know, challenging. It challenged their, you know, ethnic and religious belief systems. And I think more so than that, even, it just concerned them. They were really fearful of what my life would be like. But they really managed to like wrap their heads around that. And within 9 months, they were just like absolute allies, like the best allies ever. And then I came out as non-binary just over a year ago in lockdown. I was 32. And that was really hard. That was actually much more challenging because they didn't have any reference point for non-binary. You know, they didn't really know what it meant. And it really scared them. It scared my mother especially, because she was just so concerned for what my life would look like. And, you know, she often says things like, well, you know, your life is hard enough. People pick on you enough. Or, you know, being gay is hard enough. Why do you have to add another layer of complication and complexity to this, to your identity? But again, time heals all wounds. And within sort of 3 or 4 months, I mean, now they're just awesome. So yeah,
because I did read in another interview about that whole process, and I just want to get this bit right, but did they have to decide, like, did they have to leave their Jehovah's Witness religion?
So when I came out as gay, they you know, it was framed in a way, it was actually quite manipulative, the way that the elders of that organization framed it to my parents. So they came to my house. We call them elders. They're like priests, basically, right? So the priests came to our house and they sort of came to check in, and they'd heard the whispers that I'd come out, and they wanted to sort of pray for me, and they essentially wanted to like pray the gay away in their mind, truly. And then they sort of said, we can pray together, and God will fix you, kind of thing. And I was like, well, I don't really want any fixing. And my dad sort of said, Deni doesn't need fixing. This is who Deni is. But because my dad had certain responsibilities within that church, they kind of said to him, well, if you're going to support your son, then you're going to have to lose your responsibilities within the church. So they weren't necessarily like exiled from the religion, but certain things were stripped away from them. And fundamentally, just to exist in that religion, you kind of can't really support homosexuality. So they just took it upon themselves to remove themselves from that situation. They are still technically on paper like Jehovah's Witness, and my brother is a Jehovah's Witness, but we just, we believe in God in our own way. Like, I still believe in God. I still call God Jehovah. So we believe in God in a way that doesn't involve going to church 3 times a week,
Yeah. How did that make you feel when they decided to completely go Team Deni?
I'd love to sit here and say I was so happy, but I was actually really devastated for them because, it's a huge thing to lose. Like, that was part of our life for such a long time. It's a part of their identity. And as much as they're my parents, they're also people with their own goals and desires and belief systems. So I was really, and I still, if I think about it for too long, get quite emotional at the sacrifice that they made. But of course, it's so affirming and so beautiful to know that I have such supportive parents that they would kind of be so selfless in their love of me. And that's very much who they are as people.
They're just good parents.
They are.
This is for the younger generation. So growing up in the age of social media, I think there's so much more anxiety around creating this perfect image from such a young age, which is something that you and I wouldn't have really had to deal with when we were growing up.
No.
Tic-tac-toe.
Literally.
So even if there's more and more exposure on topics like queerness and gender fluidity, I imagine it would still be very difficult to come out and identify their place on the gender spectrum. Like, as you said before, you've got the highest rate of teen suicide, with trans kids. So for the young kids out there feeling out of place with no one to talk to about who they are, because I guess it's hard to talk to their parents as well. But also because there's a 6-month waiting list for psychologists. So in that time, what advice would you give to kids like that?
I think my advice is always kind of like a 3-step program in a way. The first step in this process is probably a better word, is to come out to and for yourself. So as a queer person, whether that's queer in relation to your gender or your sexuality or both, as a queer person, you don't owe anyone like your identity. The only person you owe that to is yourself. And that's often the hardest thing to do, right? Like, to actually say I am non-binary or I am gay out loud was such a big moment for me. So the first thing I would say to them is take that time to really do yourself the justice of coming out to yourself first. And not even like, it's not even about coming out, it's about owning your identity. Then the second part of the process is finding a safe space in which you can share that information with. That can be your parents, it might be your siblings, it might be your closest friends. I came out to my friends first in both situations. Once you've got that safe space, and don't overwhelm yourself, pick 4 or 5 people, pick one person. If you just have a bit of a safety net there, it's going to make this process easier.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have those people, because not everyone has that, idyllic situation,
No.
there are queer organizations that you can reach out to. There is always someone on the end of the phone. I'm sure you have like Lifeline over there, as we do here. I've called Lifeline many a time. So pick up the phone. There is always someone on the other end of somewhere willing to listen to you.
Yeah.
And then I think the third thing is then when you really step into your truth in a public way, because this whole notion of like being trapped in a closet is really rooted in shame and guilt, and you have nothing to be ashamed of, darling. So when you get to a moment where you can step into your own truth and exist freely publicly, whether that is in your workplace, whether it is coming out on social media, your truth is contagious, and it will be contagious to other people. People often say like, well, why do you need to spend your whole life talking about your identity online? And it's like, well, I do so for two reasons. The first reason is because I live in a world that doesn't allow me to forget my identity, sadly. And then the second thing is that my truth will be contagious because other people's truths inspired me to live my truth. So that would be that's the third part of the process for me. So it's like, do it for yourself, to yourself.
Yeah.
Find your safe space and then just step into the world freely.
Okay. Well, who inspired you in that third step of the process? Who inspired you?
Well, coming out as non-binary, I didn't really even know what that identity meant until I read an article that Sam Smith was interviewed for when they came out as non-binary. So Sam Smith was a real turning point moment for me. Then there was a person that I met in real life, a non-binary person for the first time.
Yeah.
And suddenly when they were in front of me talking about their identity, it's like I could no longer ignore my own. So I will forever be grateful to Sam Smith and to that person for just being free and raw and vulnerable and speaking their truths, because they've paved the way for people to come out and do the same thing and then sort of sit with their own truth. So yeah,
it's a really good way to use influence. Hey,
yeah.
Well, just going back to the first step of that, when you're like 10, 12, how do you even identify who you are?
I mean, I think that we have a real misconception that like kids are young, they don't know anything, they're too young. That's bullshit. So I was 5 when I first had a crush on a boy. Actually, I was 4. And as a child, you can differentiate when a feeling is a romantic or sexual one and when it's a platonic one. You don't like, you love your brother, you love your sister, but that's a platonic family love. When you are watching a TV show and you're feeling things that you probably don't feel for your brother and your sister, that's a pretty fucking clear indication that these are sexual feelings. So when you're 10 and 11 and whatever, what I would suggest to you is whatever you're feeling, just feel those things. Don't reject those feelings. And I think the problem is we live in a world that says, well, men should like women and women should like men. And there is no space in between. And because of all of these like stereotypes, going back to what we were saying earlier, we reject certain feelings because they're framed to be bad or sinful or shameful. So if you're 10 and 11, you know what you're feeling. Like there's scientific evidence to prove that you're quite sexually active internally already. So just welcome those feelings as opposed to rejecting those feelings.
Like you said, with being gay, that's a bit easier to come out with more than non-binary. So kids these days at 12, 13, they've got girlfriends, boyfriends,
totally.
It's really different to when we were in school, but with the whole gender thing, I think that I don't know, is it a bit more difficult when you're a kid to deal with identifying yourself as non-binary? Because with the feelings in your loins, it's really easy to
Sure, of course.
To get that.
I actually don't think it is. I just think that we don't have I think knowledge is power, right? So when we know more, when we know better, we do better. I have best friends who have children who are in like grade prep and grade 1, so that's like 5 and 6 years old, right? And they will have come home and said to their mum, or the mums will get a letter from the school saying, Patricia in grade 1 is actually now Patrick, and we just need to advise the parents that is their identity, and your children need to respect that identity. So I think actually you would be surprised to know how many children are stepping into their true identity, their gender identity, much sooner than we think. In fact, any research that I've ever done, especially with like trans people, for example, it speaks to these feelings of trans adults that they had when they were like 4 and 5 and 6. So I just think it's about creating a world that has knowledge and empathy and understanding, so that when those kids are feeling those things, they can freely tell their parents or their guardians about those feelings, I do think though that any kind of transition, because being non-binary also sits within the transgender umbrella, any transition is going to take more time, and there are more layers to that transition, because at 5 years old you're still under the care of your parents. It's not until you reach 16 or 18, depending on where you live, or 21 even, that you have your own legal rights to your body and what you can do. But there are some really great resources and sort of therapy that trans kids can undertake to just help be guided during that process. We have an amazing department of gender at the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne, which I think it's one of the first in the world, that has a whole department like to facilitate transgender children.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. So I think no, I don't think it starts any later than sexuality, but I think it's just not a space that we've created enough conversation around.
I think there definitely needs to be more around it.
100%.
Well, let's talk about Taylor Swift.
Sure, I'd love to.
I know you love her, and I know you've been talking about her since you've been doing these deep dive reviews into her albums. 1989 is obviously the best album. I actually went to Melbourne to see her VIP.
Amazing.
And I actually got roped into it because I didn't really love her, but when I saw her and she was like a meter away,
wow,
I was just bawling my eyes out. So pretty.
Wow,
she's just
amazing.
fiction. And then I went to see Reputation 2 in Melbourne.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was super fun because we could dress up really edgy, and I ended up wearing this tight high neck long sleeve see-through crochet dress.
Amazing.
What did you go to a concerts, and what did you wear?
So do you know what's really sad? I've never been to a Taylor Swift concert. And I blame my ex-boyfriends for this, because for 1989 and for Rep Tour, I wanted to go to both, and I had a boyfriend for each album, and each boyfriend was kind of like, no, I don't really want to go to see Taylor Swift, and I should have just gone on my own, or I should have just found people to go with, but I was living interstate, and anyway, so I've never seen her live, and actually my obsession, my true kind of like Swiftie obsession, I've only really invested in it probably for the last year and a half, actually since COVID began, to be honest, because I've always loved Taylor Swift. I mean, since Love Story, but it wasn't until Red came out that Red was the turning point moment for me. Red was when I fell in love with Taylor. Then 1989, obviously, it's one of the best pop albums of all time.
Yeah.
Reputation, I've just spent the whole morning listening to it. It's also like, it's a no skip album. But I never really like got into the nitty gritty of her life, the details, the messages in each song, you know, the relationships, whatever. And I credit a lot of my like sort of fandom to Taylor because of TikTok and Swift Talk, and basically like all these incredible creators on TikTok who deep dive into her music. And then last year or this year, end of last year, because concerts are not going to be a thing for a really long time. I don't know in New Zealand if you guys have had any of these yet, but in Australia, there's this group that started these Taylor Swift nights at nightclubs where you just go and you just listen to Taylor Swift for like 8 hours. It's all they play. Yeah, and they get a specific DJ who knows her body of work, so they know how to intertwine all the songs and whatever. So these things went viral, and mostly through TikTok last year. So this year I went to one in Melbourne, and I'm dedicated to having one happen in Geelong. And it was honestly one of the best nights of my life, because you're in this club surrounded by other Swifties. You're all there for Swift. You love the music, you know, every lyric. The music is like, takes you on a journey. And I wore a Reputation outfit to that party. I like made it myself. And I basically made the outfit that she wears in the Look What You Made Me Do video. It's so sick. I'll send you a photo after this conversation.
Oh my God.
But, yeah, so for sure, Reputation is my favorite aesthetic moment of Taylor, because it's like a moment that we've never seen her before. But I love her Lover era, and I love the Evermore kind of very like tweed jackets and country folklore vibes.
Oh yeah. She's kind of like, you know, in her early 30s, you know,
totally
mellow.
Yeah. She's earthy. She's connected with the earth now. Yeah.
Well, I have to see that outfit. Yeah. Is it all black?
It's all black. So it's like I got a jumper just from like Cotton On, and then I went to Lincraft and bought some black faux fur kind of thing. So I sewed in like a faux fur sleeve, and then I bought like iron-on transfers that say like Rep, and then I got like diamantes and like crystalled it all together.
Of course.
And then I tucked those into like a high-waisted pair of black briefs, and I've got like fishnets on and these over-the-knee boots and the dark smudgy eye, and you're just like, yes, bitch.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I remember wearing my thing and walking down the street and going, oh, my ass is out, but it's okay.
But you just feel so alive, don't you? I love it.
So this might sound a bit creepy, but I really want to know what you smell like. So what's your favorite fragrance?
Oh, it's not creepy at all. I love talking about fragrances. Okay, I can actually bring one to you. Just one sec.
This is my little fragrance selection behind me.
I noticed that. I've got a situation like that. Now I'm gonna only bring you one because I have two, but the other one's in the bathroom. So this is a really good example of just how much I love this fragrance, because it's like peeling, like the label is peeling. So, and you'll notice that I actually haven't used that much of it because you don't need very much of it. So this is called Not a Perfume. It's by Juliet Has a Gun. And it's just, okay. So it essentially, I actually know a lot about this fragrance because I did this like class on it. Okay. It's Not a Perfume is made with this thing called anthrax. So anthrax, which sounds like, you know, something really dodgy, but anthrax is it's a note that is put in lots of other perfumes, because it doesn't really have a scent. It's like, that's why it's called Not a Perfume. It's like a base note. It levels it out. So you can wear this on its own, or you can wear it with other perfumes. It's a really great layering fragrance. And it kind of just smells really fresh. Now, generally speaking, my favorite kind of scents are woody and dark and mysterious, and generally veering onto the masculine. I really like strong masculine fragrances. So one of my favorites is Aventus by Creed, which is a beautiful, it's like amazing. So basically I always say that when people smell me, I want them to feel one of two things. I either want them to feel like it's a warm hug, pardon me, or I want them to feel like they want to take my clothes off. So it's like one or the other, you know?
A warm hug that leads into something.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. What's your favorite fragrance?
Oh, I've got a lot. I like base it
Well, I
on
see you've got all
food.
the Tom Fords. I love Tom Ford as well.
Yeah, I
You've
did
got the
like a
Dior.
bit of a cull though. So
I see Joe Malone up there. Yeah, good
yeah.
one.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you've got good ones.
So
Yeah. This is all a vibe. These are
um
all a vibe.
you like the ones that are, those super bougie, the bougie ones.
Mm.
So from that group, it would be Clive Christian.
Oh, I've never heard of that. I'm gonna write that
Yeah,
down. I
and
love that bottle.
Vanilla Orchid, and it just smells a little bit green, and like it just smells super expensive.
That's what we love. That's what we love.
Yeah, because I'm trying to manifest being a rich bitch. So.
Exactly right. Is that Chanel? Yeah, you can't go wrong.
Zadig and Voltaire Just Rock.
Beautiful. Yep.
And this one's kind of similar. Narciso Rodriguez.
I love Narciso. Beautiful.
And I love Gabrielle as
well.
Yeah,
good choices. Good choices. Yeah, I know. Literally, I used to be a fragrance loyalist. I used to only wear like one fragrance for years at a time. Now I have you have significantly more fragrances than I do, but I've got like probably 15 or 20 over there, which I just kind of wear. And sometimes I really want to wear like a feminine fragrance. So I have a bunch of girls fragrances. Up there. I love YSL Dark Opium. I have another really beautiful one called Her by a Aussie fragrance house called Who Is Elijah. So yeah, lots of really cool bits and pieces.
Yeah, you definitely like the ones where you step into a room, the head turners.
Exactly. I want a head turner.
So I was also wondering, like in terms of clothes, accessories, shoes, bags, how do you shop? Like what are your go-to designers? Where do you get your inspo from? Because each outfit that you don is quite different. I think it's very mood based because you're like yellow or black.
Yeah.
Or, it always comes with the attitude.
Yeah, thank you. So I always say that like I dress according to feeling. Pardon me. I dress according to how I feel. My ultimate style icon or style icons, but let's just stick with one for now, is the fictional character of Carrie Bradshaw, which you said earlier. And what I loved about Carrie, which obviously comes by Patricia Fields, was that Carrie had this way of, you never knew what you were going to get with Carrie, but yet every look is a Carrie look, if that makes sense. So, it's like one day she's wearing, Zara with, I don't know, some fucking couture ball gown. The next day she's like wearing vintage. It's this, it's that, it's masculine, it's feminine. It's like so like inappropriate's not the right word. Like she doesn't need to be wearing a ball gown to a date with Big at like McDonald's, but she's going to anyway. Like I love that it's not like I'm going here. So this is what I always say to people. Often will go, oh, I've got a wedding to go to, or I've got a job interview. I need to wear something for that thing. If you strip away where you're going and just think about how you're feeling, you'll always look your best because you'll exude a feeling. And you could be wearing like a ball gown to the supermarket, but who the fuck cares, right? So how I shop is quite haphazard. I shop according to my feelings, which is sometimes not a good thing, because I sometimes can be a bit of an emotional shopper. I don't really shop probably as frequently as people would think, but also I have moods where I'll buy something like, weekly, like once a week, I'll buy something so that there's like a little delivery coming, especially when I'm in lockdown. But also then sometimes I'll go for like weeks at a time without buying anything. Certainly before this became my job, I used to shop very infrequently because I wasn't so full of like a social calendar of having to go to events or speaking engagements or being on telly or whatever. Whereas now, because I have to go to so many things when we're not in lockdown, and I have no issue with re-wearing things, by the way, I'm all about re-wearing things, but I like sort of step out in something that's different and maybe like, you know, maybe no one's seen before. So I find myself shopping a lot more. I'll jump online, I'll go, oh, that would be a really great dress for a event. So I'm just going to buy it now because then I'll have something to wear for that event. What brands? I am the biggest chameleon. I think I would say I'm a chameleon when it comes to style. So, you know, I can camouflage and change with the weather. I shop from like Kmart is like my favorite go-to, which sounds maybe silly, but
Okay.
obsessed. So from Kmart, we go to like Zara, H&M. I love a high street thing. I used to live in London. So in London, when I didn't have a lot of money, I really became aware of how good the high street can be and how you just need to like filter through a lot of things to get to that really great piece.
Yeah.
I love me like a little the Outnet moment because I can't afford to shop on Net-a-Porter, so I'll shop on the Outnet, which is like the sister website. Matches always does a really good sale.
Yeah.
I also love I love department store shopping, so I like just walking into David Jones and like seeing what's around. My favorite brands at the moment, I'm really feeling Dion Lee a lot. They are real. He's really kind of doing the whole gender fluid fashion thing like perfectly. So I've got a couple of pieces of Dion's which I love.
Deconstructed and
it's I love it. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's super cool. There's actually a brand, it's right behind me. This one here, it's an Aussie brand called Blanca, which I'm obsessed with. They just do like really amazing shirts. But like, you know, this is H&M, this is Ellery, this is like a local brand, this is H&M again. You know, then this is like Gorman, which is like, I think Country Road. Do you guys have Country Road in New Zealand?
Yeah, we do.
I love Country Road. They slap. Like, you just have to know what you're buying, but I love a good Country Road moment. That's like another Blanca thing. This is like Best and Less. This dress cost me, this dress cost me $15. I don't know if you guys have Best and Less in New Zealand. $15. But like, who the fuck cares, right? Camilla, I love. She's a real she's a friend of mine, and all her clothes make me feel things. Like, they're very emotional purchases. But like, I'll shop anywhere. Like, really, give me a market, give me a vintage store, give me an op shop. Don't care. I'll find something in there. Don't you worry.
So you're very much a brick and mortar. You like the shopping experience rather than the online scrolling.
Look, so I used to be, but two things have kind of changed that. One, the pandemic.
Yeah.
And two, being non-binary. So it can be really uncomfortable shopping in certain women's spaces. I get really uncomfortable trying shoes on, for example. And heels are my crutch. Like, if I could wear Kmart for the rest of my life, as long as I could still have access to like nice shoes. So, but I get really uncomfortable walking into a women's shoe store and trying on heels. I find that I feel less uncomfortable at like a David Jones or a big department store because there's so many people in there, people aren't like staring at me. Yeah. But when I walk into like a small shoe store, I get really self-conscious. So I pretty much buy all of my shoes online. I know my size. I know generally what I will fit in. And then I've started buying clothes a lot more online for those same reasons. It's, you know, if I buy a dress and I don't like it, I can just send it back and return it, and I don't have to worry about the sales assistant giving me like a weird look. But I will say that I will always prefer real life shopping to online shopping because it just, I don't know, I just love it.
Yeah, I do like it. It's so much effort though. I get so tired.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. And I think as kids, we used to have these like amazing shopping days where we would drive to Melbourne and we'd spend the whole day in Melbourne shopping, and like, you would shop till you drop and like stop for lunch and like get dinner on the way home. And those days are really exhausting. So I don't really shop like that. I have this theory that any emotion that is forced doesn't work. So like, forced fun doesn't work. That's why I think Christmas Day is a crock of shit, because Christmas Day always ends in arguments and people getting drunk and really like not fun things. Because when you try to like New Year's Eve, forced fun. Forced fun doesn't work. So forced shopping, like I'm going shopping today, you could have all the money in the world and I guarantee you will not find what you're looking for.
Yeah, you end up buying other things.
Exactly right. Whereas when you just kind of shop according to your
Mm.
mood and your feeling, I find it always works better.
Oh, so dangerous. Oh, the designer outlet warehouse sales in Melbourne.
Sis.
Oh my God.
But also, can I tell you, when I a few years ago I went to New York and they have this whole like designer outlet like village. It's like an hour and a half out of Manhattan.
Woodbury?
Sorry?
Woodbury?
Maybe. There's like a Celine there. There's like a Prada. There's a Gucci. There's So mum and I went to that venue and I bought like these like 6 Celine sneakers and like a bunch of things. But even those things, even those sorts of days, there's so much pressure on those days to like find good things.
Yeah.
So annoying.
I couldn't make that one, so I only did the other outlet at like the very bottom of Manhattan.
Oh, Century 21.
Yeah.
Love Century 21. But also, I never buy designer full price. Pretty much never. I will only, there are like maybe 2 or 3 things in my wardrobe that I've bought full price. And actually, all 3 of them in the most recent times have been the things I've bought from Dion Lee. But I will never shop full price. And that's what I love about online shopping. I am the queen of getting things on sale, getting things like reduce to clear. Like I'll walk into David Jones and I'll be like, yep, can I have those? And there'll be like one left in my size. And they were like a $2,000 pair of shoes that I ended up getting for like $310.
Wow.
It's my gift in life, I think, truly. The only full price pair of shoes I have are my Manolos. They were a really special purchase. Otherwise, everything else, every pair of shoes I'm looking at here, I've bought on sale. Yeah.
So because you do like 1,000,001 things, what does a typical day look like for you, which is probably more like a typical week because you would do things every day?
Yeah, I mean, it's really different. Like every week and certainly every day is different. I try to allocate time throughout the week to create content that is just like content for me, for my own creative soul. So whether that's doing something that's like related to queer education, or maybe it's like, you know, a Taylor Swift album review or a random fashion thing or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So I try to do soul content for me.
Yeah.
That's then always balanced with sponsored content and paid partnerships, because that's how the paid partnerships allow me to do, 5 hours of queer education for free, or, so it's balancing the sponsored content and the non-sponsored content. It's working with my management team. I speak to my manager pretty much every day. And we are constantly, brainstorming, and like, it's like a game of tennis, constant tennis. Like, here's an idea. Oh, we got an email from this brand. Cool. So there's a lot of that. In a non-lockdown situation, generally speaking, every week, if not every 2 weeks, there will be some kind of event. Whether that's me just going to an event to support a brand, or it might be an organization or a friend, or it's like speaking at an event. My months have become quite consistent with media, things like this, like podcast interviews, radio interviews, whatever that might be. And then it's also like working on bigger picture things behind the scenes, which, I at some point I'm really excited to start talking about, because there's a lot of little things that are happening behind the scenes that are the bigger picture goals. So, and then it's like trying to balance actually having a personal life and, spending time with friends and family and like dating, maybe, like it's like trying to fit in all those things, which I'm not very good at, because I'm an Aries. So I'm very all or nothing. So I'm either going like hell for leather on the work stuff, and then the personal stuff is falling to the wayside, or it's the other way around. But lately it's just been work and not enough fun. I say fun, not enough personal Deni time.
Yeah.
Because my work is really fun. So yeah.
So how many hours of sleep do you get a night?
Darling, not many. So I have like chronic insomnia.
Oh no.
Always have. But it comes in seasons. So I could go for like a year and have like the best sleeps ever. And then I'll go for like 6 months and have really bad sleeps. So actually my sleeps have been not too bad. But like to give you an idea, like last night I fell asleep at like 1:30 and I woke up this morning at like 8:30, which is late for me. I hate sleeping in. It's like against my religion. I hate it. But sometimes my body just needs it, obviously. So this morning I actually had a dream that I was going to miss this interview. That's funny. But I can operate on, 4 to 6 hours of sleep. That's obviously not the ideal amount of sleep. It'd be lovely to get like 8 to 10 hours each night, but that's just not going to happen.
Wow. Okay. How do you manage your time each day if you've got a million things going on?
So especially in lockdown, I take like each day at a time, sometimes even like each hour at a time. So like I'll look at I live by calendar. Like if I didn't have a schedule, I would be, and I'm quite forgetful. So I have a photographic memory and I will remember things in detail. But like I won't remember what time this interview was supposed to start today unless I've seen it in my calendar, for example.
Right.
So yeah, like I'm very visual. So I remember things like crazy. So I wake up, I look at my calendar. That's the first thing I do every morning. And then I go, okay, cool. So you've got this interview at 11 o'clock. So maybe for the first few hours, you can work on this. And then in the afternoon, maybe you can like treat yourself to like a movie and you can just switch off for 2 hours or go for a walk or whatever. I just kind of take things a day at a time. I probably need to get better at looking at my weeks maybe and going, okay, these are the tasks for the week and how we're going to allocate some time accordingly to each of those tasks. But I think at the moment, because life is so unpredictable, things that I have in my calendar for this weekend, for example, may not happen. So it's kind of easier to just take it a day at a time.
Sorry, you have photographic memory?
Yeah. So it's really weird. I thought everyone did until people started pointing out to me, Deni, like something is not right here. So my photographic memory has honestly been like one of my biggest assets in terms of my work. So like
I bet.
Yeah, it's wild. Like ever since I was little, I would look at something, whether it's an image or a movie or like a moving image, or whether it's, so when I listen to songs, for example, this is how I've figured this out. When I listen to a song, I can see the lyrics in front of my eyes, like they sort of flash up as the song is going. So I can memorize song lyrics very quickly. And I don't see just like I see the story as it's unfolding. Whereas I had a conversation with my mate the other day who says that he listens to songs all the time, but doesn't really know what the songs are about. Whereas my mind is just instantly decoding things. And when I read, for example, I don't read word by word. I read like line by line.
Okay.
Or sometimes even like sentence by sentence. So I don't know if I was to, so if I was to open a book, so I'm a really quick reader. I can remember what people are wearing pretty much. Like if someone is in my life and they are of value or they're in my daily life, I will remember exactly what they were wearing the first time I met them without a fail. Like my mind just takes a photo of that. Or I can go, I don't know, in 2011 the Prada collection for spring summer looked like this. Yeah.
I was gonna say, so if you're like front seat at a catwalk show, you would remember the whole show.
Yeah. And I'll remember it in like 12 years' time.
Okay. So what about like studying? Did you just like ace everything? Read it once, ace everything?
I'm always a very last minute person.
Okay.
Always. So with studying, I would study like the night before the exam. Always. And then I would walk into that exam with a fresh image in my mind of what those things look like. But so weirdly, my photographic memory stops when it comes to numbers. So it's really interesting. Numbers actually scare me. Like visually, when I see a bunch of numbers, it freaks me out. My mind. So I'm not like dyslexic, at all.
Yeah.
But when I see numbers, my mind just goes, no, that's not for me.
You just don't
They
like looking at them?
they overwhelm me.
Okay.
The math overwhelms me.
Yeah.
Anything that's too like, sciencey and stuff like
Yeah.
that's just not my brain. My brain is very like, I don't know if it's the left or the right, but it's the whatever the creative side is, that's the brain that I am. Yeah.
So all the movies and all the TV shows that you've seen, you remember?
Yeah, and like it's not even just that. Like, I will remember having a conversation with my best friend when we were 18 and we were sitting in this car and she was wearing this thing and this song was on the radio and I felt this way in that moment. Whereas like my best friend doesn't even remember the day I came out to her. And I'm like, what are you talking about? How can you not remember such a fundamental moment? Or like my mum will forget things. And I'm like, Mum, like, so, but sometimes I wish I could forget things because there are chapters of my life or moments in my life where I just wish I could have forgotten them. I reckon I could probably ID by face like every person I've ever hooked up with, and trust me, there's a lot. Can't tell you all their names, but I reckon if they were all standing in front of me, I could remember exactly when I hooked up with those people. Yeah.
Do you have a list of like who
I used to keep a list.
Yeah.
But then it just became like there was no point in keeping that list anymore.
It's like I remember on my list, I was like, train guy. Don't remember.
Yeah, nah. Then
I had to delete it because I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. It makes me feel bad, and it doesn't even matter.
There are people on TikTok who have Excel spreadsheets with like the people they hooked up with, where it was a rating out of 10, like a sentence on like how the experience was. So wild.
2 more questions left.
Cool. This has been fun. All good.
Where to from here?
So I think I had a realization last year that actually my passion and the thing that like wakes me up every day is storytelling. In whatever way that is, whether it's, fashion, identity, music, like just the human experience. I think we are more full, well-rounded people when we come together and share stories. So where to from here? All I want to do is keep sharing stories. Like for the rest of my life, what medium that exists in will change and will be evolving over the next like 12 months. So it might be, TV, it might be podcasting, writing. It will continue to be all those things. It will continue to be social media. I think for the next 12 months, I really want to work on facilitating stories that really matter. I think there's so much we need to change in the world. And if I can help change any of those things, or at least shed a light, probably more so, to certain people's stories, I think I'd be a very happy person if I could just keep doing that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, I wanna ask you one
thing.
Go. What do you think about this whole cancel culture thing?
Sure. So I think there's a difference between canceling or cancel culture and accountability, right?
Yeah.
I think accountability is really important. I think cancel culture can be really problematic. But I think with any of these things, we have to understand where is the intention coming from? So people tend to cancel things or people because there's an intention behind it. So what's the intention? Are they hurt? Do they feel invalidated? Do they feel like they've been attacked in some way? Has a group of people been attacked by this act or this thing? So whenever it comes to cancel culture, I get very wary of, canceling that person or that thing. I'm more concerned about like, well, what are the reasons behind it? How do we fix? What's the solution? Because just canceling someone is really not going to provide any solution. It's a very temporary sense of gratification or validation, right? Oh, let's all cancel this person because they've done this. Yeah, that feels really good because it's a very ego-driven thing. It's like, no, they're wrong and we're right. Whereas I think accountability generally has more solutions. It's more solutions driven. And I'm a very solutions based person. So for me, here's a perfect example. This morning, I was looking at those images of Kanye, you know, calling Taylor off the stage. Then like everything that happened with the phone call, whatever. And then there are various things that have happened with Kanye over the last 18 months. Now, I am like a die-hard Kanye fan, like die-hard. And I understand that Kanye has bipolar. He is, you know, manic depressive. There are many variables at play here. So that's why I could never just say I'm canceling Kanye because of these things that he's done, because it's not as simple as that. Let's go further. Why did he do those things? Why did he jump up on stage and treat Taylor like that? Like, I want to know the why and what the solution is before I just go, nah. And of course, there are instances where canceling is the only option. And we look at people like R. Kelly, you know, or brands like there's this whole thing with like Chick-fil-A in America being really homophobic, or, you know, right? So there are certain things that I will say, no, I'm not going to support that. Like someone told me recently that the Salvation Army is really homophobic. So that I will just keep that in the, so I'll just keep that. Well, I mean, they're a Christian organization. Of course they're going to be homophobic. So I'll just keep that in the back of my mind. But, you know, I think you also have to have an element of empathy, like what we said at the start, like
compassion.
Second chance. You know, I think everyone deserves a chance to be held accountable and then to do better. You know, like let's put an emphasis on the doing better, because otherwise I think people, and especially people who are older than us, they get really scared of doing anything for fear of being cancelled. And you have to also provide some context to when these things happened. You know, if we look back at things historically, of course, things that were done and said in the 90s, like, should they have been done and said? No. But did they have the context around certain topics that we have now? Also no. So you just have to be really aware of all of this stuff, I think.
But I think even for the younger generation, when it's always this, you know, toxic of like black and white, kids in their 20s, like they noticeably drink way less and party way less and socialize way less, have sex way less than we did. And, you know, I think it's also because you're constantly concerned that you're going to do something dumb and you're going to get filmed. And then later on it pops up. It's just always this anxiety of, you know, I might be held accountable for just being young and dumb, which I think is a phase that we've all right to be in at some point.
Couldn't agree more. It's a conversation that, you know, could merit its own podcast episode thing, because it's so layered. And like, where do you draw the line? You know, where does one draw the line? I also think that, like, when it comes to social activism and educating people, I will never cancel anyone that comes to me with pure intentions. Like I always say on my Instagram, that no question is a dumb question as long as you ask it with empathy and respect and love, like it's all good. But if you come and you are like purposely being a dickhead or homophobic or transphobic or racist, that's a whole different story. It's much easier to go, well, you don't even care to know. But I think if we actually approach things with a level of empathy and care, then people will just learn. And then again, it's like we give people a chance to grow. I think it's really important.
Yeah. I mean, we've all done horrendous, stupid
100%.
things. We've got to make mistakes. You live and you learn.
Absolutely.
My last question for you is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me just think about that. I mean, there are so many. Okay, I'm going to give you two. So one came from my dad when I was very, very young. It's a random one, but he used to always say to me, so, okay, one's going to be about relationships and one's going to be about life. Okay. So on relationships, my dad always said to me, Deni, when you're choosing your partner, just observe the way that they speak to and treat their parents, because the way that they speak to and treat their parents is the same way they're going to speak to and treat you. And I always was like, what are you talking about, Dad? You're full of it. Like, but he was so right. Every single relationship I've ever had, that person has had a pretty fragile relationship with their parents and projected that onto me. Whereas every partner I've ever had has come to my house and gone, my God, the way that you and your parents are, like there's so much love there and respect and whatever. So that's a piece of advice from Papa Todorovic. Observe the way your boyfriends and girlfriends and partners are treating their families. Rocky's always got your back, honey. My dad is a fucking wealth of knowledge. And then I think my second piece of advice actually comes from Oprah Winfrey, which, you know, she doesn't know that she's told me this. But Oprah Winfrey says that on the subject of life, you must always listen to the whispers. Listen to the whispers before the whispers become a shout, before that shout becomes a slap in the face, before that slap in the face becomes a brick wall that's standing right in front of you that you cannot ignore, right?
Yeah.
If you listen to the whisper, and the whisper is your intuition, it's your soul, it's your spirit. Had I listened to my whispers many, many years ago, all throughout the course of my life, in various aspects of my life could have been far less traumatic. So never ever lose sight of your whisper, of your intuition, of your like higher power, because it will speak to you at times of need. And if you listen to it when it's a whisper, you're going to avoid so much heartbreak and so much unnecessary trauma.
That's a scary thing to do, though.
Of course it is. It's the scariest thing to do.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you know, like, back to Taylor, I was listening to a song yesterday, I can't remember which one it was, but it's like sometimes the red flags in life, regardless of what, you know, category, they are right in front of us. Like they are literally right in front of us, red flag. And yet we still go in. It's like, why do we do that? Why? And there are many reasons why, but it's like we as humans just need to get better at leading with vulnerability, and because fear and vulnerability are often one and the same, you know. And I just watched this amazing thing on Netflix by Brené Brown. It's called like Daring Greatly or something like that. And it's like a TED talk essentially, that Brené Brown does on just living in that space of being vulnerable, doing things that scare you. It's she the one who did that one about shame as well. Everything. Like Brené Brown is her and Oprah, man. Those two together, we can all learn a lot from those two. But yeah, listen to the whispers. Sorry, that's a really long answer to your question.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I had such a good time today.
Me too. This has been lovely. So cute. All right, honey, have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Bye.